Welcome to the show, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in. I am Karl Hughes, as always, and today I've got my good friend, Greg Heilers, phoning in from China, halfway around the world today. So this will be a lot of fun, Greg. Thanks for coming on the show. Please give us a little bit of an intro. What have you been working on, and what do you do these days?
Awesome to be here with you, Karl. We at Jolly SEO, we have stayed in our lane for about 8 years as earned link builders. So we don't do paid links, we do earned. But me personally, why am I in China? I married into it about 10 years ago, which we could get into where life takes you, why it takes you places. But that's more or less me in a nutshell at the moment.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I know my knowledge of you picks up, I think, around when you started Jolly SEO or maybe a couple years into it. But I know you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. And in our past conversations, you've hinted at things you've done in the past. I've never really dug into it. So the first thing I wanted to do, Greg, just because it's kind of fun for me and I'm curious, tell me your entrepreneurial origin story a bit. Give me the quick version of that.
Yeah, it actually starts with China. In my 20s, I didn't really work for money. I was kind of, I call it a voluntourist, not the kind where you pay a few grand and then they pamper you, but where you work in exchange for room and board. And I did that all through my 20s, making a little money where I could to support myself and then go off. Long story short, met my now wife when we were both in Guatemala. She's from China. She said, "You want to be with me? You know where you got to go." So I said, "Okay, ma'am, I will do that." And needed to make money. So my first clients were here in China. I was editing translated content and learned that writers make more money and have more cushy turnaround times than editors. And that parlayed into Jolly Content, our first agency with my business partner, Morgan Taylor. And written content, not as sophisticated as your draft dev, Karl, but written content like SEO, content mill level content, that was a tough business. So Jolly SEO was born out of that whole learning experience. The first business, I'm sure anyone listening knows how rough the first business can be.
Yeah, you bring up something that comes up often when I talk to people on this show, which is the business you're currently running is almost never your first one. And if it is, you actually had several kind of underground failed attempts that don't really make it to your LinkedIn profile, right? I think I was just talking to a guest earlier on interviewing him, and he was saying he had at least 10 little attempts at trying to get something off the ground before he finally got one that became a real company. I think that's an important point to entrepreneurship, right? Is there is so much under the surface that we try that doesn't make the light of day. And talk to me a little bit more about that and like what those experiences taught you, because I think that's the important thing. Like you took something away from running Jolly Content and the other little, editing business and all that. What were you learning along the way?
Yeah. And totally for the record, I still turn to my wife occasionally. I don't want to freak her out, but I'm like, if this doesn't work out, like I've heard from the successful entrepreneurs that it usually takes 6, 7, 8 businesses to get that one that works. So I'm only on like 3 or 4. So just like, well, things can still happen. We failed at software. We did the classic a few years back, if you remember. All the rages, if you're an agency, just turn that into a software so you can go down market. That was a good 150K and a couple years of spinning our wheels. Don't run that anymore. The editing and the content, what was really rough for me was the client review process. And so what we moved into was something where the deliverables timeline is so tight by nature of working with media that it needed to be hands off. And so the positioning to clients was, this is great, fully managed, it's hands off for you. But internally was a sigh of relief because we're no longer subject to triple revision requests after agreeing that they would trust us to do the dang thing. So that was a hard lesson, and I mean years long learning curve on the revision side to realize we just need clients to trust us to do the work and give us space to get the job done.
Yeah, that is a very tough one because when you're starting out, I'm going to assume some things, but this was my feeling too, was I wasn't confident enough to just say, oh yeah, I can do it all and let me handle it and keep your hands off it. I was a little bit like scared to do that. So I said like, okay, yeah, you can get reviews, you can get unlimited revisions. Like, yeah, we'll fix it for as long as you're working with us. And I went to the exact same thing with Draft.dev early on. And so I can tell you that your experience is not unique. And a lot of us make this mistake. Did that play into how you kind of operated when you started Jolly? Did that, some of that realization kind of like, or Jolly SEO, like, did that really make you realize, oh, we've got to build a process that is something that we won't get stuck in revision hell around?
Yeah, absolutely. It pushed me to adopt what I thought was a dirty word for a few years, which is productizing. I thought that what we did was so special, it could not be productized. And then I started to see the benefits. If they're buying a product, it's not a custom service. There are pros and cons, absolutely. And, transparently, we all the time still make a sale of what we think we've communicated is the product. And we believe that the client, by signing the contract, understands and agrees with us. And then after the fact, they want these custom things on the back end. And sometimes we do even honor those. Hopefully, I'm not shooting myself in the foot here with a future client that might clip this and throw it back at me. But that's part of the game of client services. And so we're not fully productized, but leaning into productizing, it helped us save our own sanity, where anyone who's been in client services acknowledges that it's, as much as we love serving, there are some clients who make us feel the pain at times. And so productizing a bit, it's been helpful for managing expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I probably heard about you first on Tropical MBA. I actually just had Dan on the podcast here not long ago. So I'm a big fan of them and always have been since before being an entrepreneur. But I think you guys were probably one of the first ones I heard of that was a true productized service. And so, as in way of introduction, let's kind of cut to the chase here. What does Jolly SEO do? What is your productized service offering? And let's talk about maybe how that got started, how you realized that was a need that you could productize.
Yeah, so I'll start with the start. Jolly content was failing. I was telling Morgan, like, I don't know how much longer I got in this. Morgan lied his face off and was like, it's going to be great. You'll see. So I stuck with that damn dumpster fire. And on the side, I needed freelance to feed my family. And I fell into what we do now, which is we connect clients with the media. And it's all kinds of tiers of media. But if you're familiar with the term HARO, help a reporter out, that was kind of the OG in this space. There's journalists and marketers publishing content looking for experts, and we get our clients as experts embedded in those articles. And so I was doing that for a couple of clients to pay the bills, and I realized, oh, this thing's in demand. We actually have something that's useful to people. Like you described, Jolly content, we struggled with a lack of confidence, but it was a lack of confidence grounded in we weren't providing real value. We provided written content, but we didn't do any promotion. We didn't do any research before any of that. We really didn't know what to provide people except for words. And so here we finally had something that served a need, and there was a lot of demand. And that's what Jolly SEO does today, is help people get in the media as a hands-off service.
I've worked with you early on at draft.dev when we were really trying to build our link profile and investing more in that. And it certainly does help back then, at least. I can only speak to what it was 5 years ago. You keep up with this, and so you know what it's doing today. Tell me about link building and media placements in general, because this is I feel like you're edging into that world of gray hat SEO in some people's minds. And again, I know that it can be done well, but it can also be done in really shady ways. So maybe give me an overview of that landscape of what is link building and where does media placement come into that? Just kind of overview for people who aren't in SEO like us.
First off, what we do involves writing as someone else. And so there are some people who ethically or morally, let's say, are against this notion of ghostwriting, where you're writing for someone else. And to them, there's not much I can do there. I say, like, that's your opinion, and I totally respect that. I would say that presidents have ghostwriters. A bunch of books are ghostwritten. It's pretty common,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So it's okay though if someone's against that. So that's like outside of SEO, even. That's something to consider. But inside SEO, the question of are links still valuable crops up every year. They are still. It's demonstrated over and over again. It's like, is SEO dead? It's just a question that we entertain all the time. And fortunately, with ChatGPT coming on the scene, and I use that kind of synonymously with all the other platforms, ChatGPT coming on the scene, their citations, meaning what the material they cite in their responses to users, really revolve around brand mentions. And so that means your company name being mentioned in other publications. And so we caught a little bit of tailwind. We catch a lot of headwinds being in SEO, including AI coming on the scene in general. So we'll take any tailwind we can get. So in a nutshell, it's a mixed bag. Reddit did this deal with Google that really changed up a lot of things. ChatGPT came on the scene that really is still mixing up a lot of things. And it's been like every business. It's not all up and to the right, unfortunately. It's been up and down. But for our little space of earned link building, which, as you said, we, even though we position it as different from paid link building, as somehow morally superior, it's still a little gray hat. We're still trying to seed the internet or the LLM media that they're dishing out to users.
The thing you mentioned there, I just want to kind of zoom in on this because I'm realizing this hardcore in the last year or two. And that is that I think marketing agencies, especially, are very volatile businesses. I think very few are steady up and to the right for long periods of time because the nature of what we do is so at the whims of trends and technology that changes and it's completely out of our control. And I don't think that's untrue for any marketing agency at any size. I think it's just we feel it a lot when we're small, like you and I are, where you only have the difference between 10 employees and 3 is huge. The difference between 10,000 and 5,000 is maybe doesn't feel quite so big. So anyway, a point being, what I'm getting around to is how do you weather that roller coaster of trends changing and technology changing, and just broadly speaking, like psychologically, how do you weather that, as well as like tactically, how do you keep the business relevant? What have you found works for you?
Yeah, I'll say tactically, I'm shifting a little bit right now. I used to turn my nose up at people who kept 6+ months of cash in the bank. And I played this 0% APR credit card game for years. We've never paid a penny of interest on any debt, and we've kept like 100K in debt for years, rotating. And so I thought that was how I weathered the ups and downs, was by being clever like that. But managing that is stressful. Managing that debt so that we didn't pay that penny of interest, it's been stressful. And so I meant to end that game. And the credit card companies, wouldn't you know it, they ended the game on me as of the time of this recording. I can't find a dang new card. I thought, all right, 2026 is the year. Well, 2026 is really the year. I think that game's over. So things like that, I'm shifting as time goes on, where I'm like, Scrappy was fun, Scrappy was necessary, but now I need to get the money in the bank so that I can sleep a little easier and not have to have this side task of managing credit cards. But emotionally, I think that's the thing that I found myself listening to the business guru type audio clips, where I used to think that was cheesy. I need those guys and gals who don't know me, but I need them in my corner to remind me that most of this is about not giving up. Most of this is just challenge after challenge after challenge and eating it and figuring out the solution. Because I love those moments where it's up and to the right. We had an awesome 9-month run last year, recovering from what was previously a long dip, but we're not in the 9-month run anymore. And so I'm in another bit of kind of eating it moment. And so I that's what I'm doing emotionally, is kind of using those clips to prop me up and remind me that everyone's going through this, kind of how we started at the top of the hour, which was, for some people, it goes all the way to losing the whole dang business. I hope it doesn't go that far, but just reminding myself, like, this isn't the long-term outlook. This is the short-term pain I'm just going to have to get through and actively get through, not just passively enjoy this kumbaya, like serene, like it's fine. I can be equanimous about this. So
I love that. I think you're bringing up something that speaks to me very, very personally. And I don't think I could have understood it until I became an entrepreneur and started to weather those ups and downs. But that is that the importance of the positive energy and positive self, like this positive environment you put yourself in, right? And maybe that's what I would call it. I'm a big fan, and only have become one since starting a business, a big fan of like Tony Robbins. And it's super cheesy. Like if look, I get if anybody listening is turned off by somebody like Tony Robbins, like it's kind of, it can be tough. And he has some things that maybe I don't agree with and other people don't agree with. That's fine. But there's some core things there about like believing in yourself and that you can do things, and then taking big ambitious actions repeatedly and seeing what the results of those are, and then using that encouragement to lever up and do it again. That it's just fundamental to doing something hard like we're doing. And so I think it is really important to get yourself surrounded with positive feedback, positive sort of sounds that just keep you going, whatever they are. Again, it could be like, I remember this early on with draft.dev, listening to Tropical MBA, hearing other entrepreneurs talk about these challenges. Like that was encouraging to me. It's, reading a Tony Robbins book is encouraging to me. All this stuff. It's cheesy when you're on the outside, but I totally agree with you. It's super important. Anything else that you've found like encouraging or helpful, or things that kind of keep you riding those waves in the sanest way possible?
yeah, a lot of people, I think wisely, counsel against what I have, which is a 50-50 partnership with Morgan. And it's certainly, like any marriage, comes with its downside sometimes. But in Morgan, I have a friend of 20 years. And so whereas our operator turns to me and says things like, you know what, I love how you just don't seem phased by this. Like you're not freaking out, referring to the latest crisis of the day, right? And I'm like, and I just told her transparently on the last one, I was like, well, I can't freak out to you. Like you're not the person I freak out to. On Friday, I called to Morgan to vent for 25 minutes about how screwed we are in this context. That's who I turn to. So for me, it's a bit of a crutch. So that's why sometimes, I reached out to you, Karl, a few weeks ago with like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm going out on my own. Sometimes it's a legitimate business reason where I see an opportunity, and Morgan gives me his blessing and is like, you go do that thing because I'm not going to do that. And other times I feel like there's a little bit of me who's like, do I need this support? But honestly, for the last 8 years working with Morgan, like I wouldn't change a thing about that, because being able to turn to him and I've really valued our conversations, but I know that you have that relationship in your business too. So like it's a very valuable thing to me that, although obviously if you're a solo, you can't really change that right now. I would just say if you're considering taking on a partner, but my only caveat is he's been a friend since high school. So we have a foundation of trust and love that I'm not worried about is his response, so that he can get some leverage on me in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when I started draft.dev, I was solo and then picked up my partner later. And the difference psychologically in going into this alone and having someone who is equally invested and cares as much about it as you and rides a different cycle of ups and downs is huge. It's got its downsides. I agree. It's got its challenges. It means we have to make twice as much money so we can pay ourselves. It means we have to consider like all decisions have to be a little bit of a give and take, and there's more balancing act here, but absolutely net positive for me so far. And again, we're only a few years in, but I think it's good to hear that you've had that experience too. Something you mentioned there that I want to double in on is you've always had some sorts of side projects you've worked on and off in the last several years while running Jolly. You've done speaking, you've done a course, we've talked about other big acquisition ideas you've had and things. Tell me about that, and how has that sort of fed back in and helped you become a better entrepreneur as you've done those things?
Yeah. So failed software, that was with Morgan completely. That was our attempt to sell down market, have a low ticket item and have it be part of the value ladder. And, in the end, although I do think we succumbed a bit to shiny object syndrome, it fit into marketing. It was in the same exact vertical. It just was in a different rung. And so that did nothing but bolster our authority, assuming we positioned the exit well, which I thought we did all right. I thought we did okay, not financially, but just image-wise, getting out of there. So that one worked out. I've done the HARO course, so teaching people how we do what we do. That was an example of Morgan saying, like, I'm not going to do this. You just go do it and enjoy that money and mention the company sometimes, refer people who don't want to do it themselves but already bought the course, that kind of stuff. So that certainly made sense. One thing we're not really naming, but I reached out to you in recent weeks saying, hey, Karl, I want to do the AI silver tsunami thing. Like I want to find an awesome business that's functioning, that the owner is aging and doesn't want to implement AI, and I want to take it over and I want to do that. And Morgan would be an investor, but not an operator. And I'm looking for a couple investors. And that I really see it more aligned with what you're doing with your holding company. I'd see it actually as a diversification play. And if I was fortunate enough to emotionally, I also would tie it back to my pre-digital days. I'd find something, not trying to pretend that I'm young anymore and can get out there physically and do all the things, but something where I could do an occasional physical task or see people face to face. So something in my local community would be kind of the moonshot, if you will, with that. And I'm the only reason I'm stalling is I'm petrified that I'm going to succumb to shiny object syndrome. And the other things were definitely in my lane and really aligned with Jolly. And this one is explicitly outside. So I'm just making sure that I'm being thoughtful, that is an appropriate move, and that I'm not just, it's so normal for once you get this many years into a business to think maybe the grass actually has been greener or like now it's really greener or like now. So I'm still wrestling with that, as you can tell.
I constantly oscillate between thinking we should double down on what we have. We know this industry. We have so much experience, so much, like clients to leverage, et cetera. And a sunk cost fallacy of, well, just because we've been doing it doesn't mean we have to keep doing it. Like, you're falling into this fallacy. It's constant. I don't have an answer for this. So I love to hear that other people have that problem too.
Oh, I have an answer for you. Morgan and I bought Bitcoin and we're like, we're going to be fine. So it's all going to be okay. I mean, jokes aside, we literally did go do that just to satisfy that urge. Of course, money we could afford to lose and watch go to zero and cry about it, but not break us. But yeah, I don't have an answer for that either.
I do think one of the challenges of entrepreneurship that I underestimated early on was how the bigger the company gets and the more independent it gets from me personally, the harder this is because it's more open-ended. There's more options in a way. And, early days is, I'm going to say this flippantly, but it's easy because just make enough money. Just make enough money to survive. You're doing everything you can to get the next paycheck for yourself and pay the team and all that. But then you get to a certain level and you're like, oh, we did that. Now, what do we do? Like, the world's our oyster. It's honestly harder. And I think people don't get that from the outside. You're going to say, oh, that's stupid, Karl. Like, just do whatever you want. Just go sit on a beach. But like, we're not wired that way. We're constantly thinking about optimizing and making the most of our time and investment. And like, man, I am right there with you. So I don't have the answer to that.
Well, I felt like I was on the outside until the last statement you made that we're constantly optimizing, because that is the truth of it. We really reached where we wanted to be a year or so ago. It's just that now I don't want to be there anymore. So.
Yeah, it's never ending, man. Greg, one of the things that we both share, besides being in content and around marketing, is that generative AI has really shaken up both of our businesses in probably multiple ways. For us at draft.dev, it changed the question of, is SEO dead? came up over and over again and is still coming up. It also changed the way that we create content for clients now. Our delivery timelines, the people involved has all changed. I imagine you guys have changed a lot at Jolly SEO in the last couple of years. So give me the rundown. Like maybe let's start with internally what has happened, what's changed at Jolly SEO, and then we'll kind of talk bigger picture.
Yeah. Internally, it's great for us because like any business owner, huge opportunity. 3 years ago, we were still terminating writers who we detected were using AI. And I somewhat confidently stand by that decision. I think we cut some relationships with some people unnecessarily. And I also think that our skill level at using those and the paranoia was so high that the decision at the time, although very brute, kind of blunt force, was the right decision. And then 2.5 years ago, we began doing the most rudimentary. We would take these questions in our little space, these questions that the journalists post, and paste them into ChatGPT and try to get some drafted content that then we could edit and send out. And that ended up being a phenomenal win. We cut costs not across all the quality tiers we offer, but we started from the bottom. At our lowest quality tier, we cut cost by 80% on that thing. So it actually allowed us to reintroduce pricing that we had grown out of the market a couple years prior to that. And so today we have a product that's cheaper. We have other more expensive ones, but we have a product that's cheaper than 3 years ago, which is pretty awesome. And then the next project we did, we just actually wrapped up about a few weeks ago, or just before Thanksgiving of 25. It took us 11 months, and it was with the next higher tier of quality. And I'd guesstimate between the COGS and the OPEX, probably around 60-ish% of cost savings on that outreach. That was a little more complicated, more moving parts, and it wasn't so rudimentary. We use an app called Relay. We had a contractor build something for us in Retool. The next step for us will be like more complexity, like N8N. So we've done a mix of me trying to learn, trying to build some in-house, but the way that I went about it earlier on, I created some fear, and so it's been a bit of trying to get people to be willing to stick their heads back up again, and me proving to them like this isn't like tall poppy syndrome going to happen. Like I'm actually wanting more people interested in AI, and everyone's there now, thankfully. But it's been a process for us for sure, and that's just internal, as you know. Then there's the external factors on our little company.
Yeah. Sticking with the internal for a second, because I went through this very similar struggles in the last year, especially. That's when it really started to hit us that we have to shift towards it, because we put it off similar to you. Like for the first couple of years, it was like, well, this isn't good enough. And people are just using it in a very naive way. And it was causing quality issues that we had to fix later and things like that. So that was bad at first. And then this year we really like leaned in and said, okay, we're going to figure out how to make it work for us and just rebuild the whole system. And it's been hard. And candidly, a lot of the team did not want to come along for that ride. Lots of reasons behind that. Did you have similar experiences where like team members were like opting out, like, this isn't for me. I don't want to deal with AI slop anymore. Like, what was that like for you?
With nothing but love to these two people, in case they watch this, there were two people at the top of our team managing everyone who I eventually, after several conversations, I delivered about a 10-minute rant. There's no other way to describe it, about a year ago. And I was like, it's almost 2025. Like, we do written content. There have been off the shelf solutions for years at this point. Don't tell me that we can't generate content for less than the rate we were paying our writers, the same rates I was making more than 5 years earlier as a freelance writer. And none of that made any sense to me. And I was trying to explain to them, and they would say, if only we had someone who knew content. And I was like, this guy, like this, the guy that pays you, I personally wrote thousands of articles. Like, I do actually know something about content. So it was a pretty epic rant, even by my own standards, if I may say so. And it's been tough. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have, for example, instead of writers on this one, that's the thing that we just completed over 11 months on this one type of outreach. Instead of writers, we now have editors, right? So the words are being generated and we're paying the editors hourly and they're the same people who were writers for us, which was always the vision, not to need to terminate them, but to upskill, like retrain, to use bigger industry terms. And so this one editor said, like, I know where the industry's going. Like, I would love to use AI and learn how to use it. These people are not stupid. They're scared. And it's been a long journey of explaining, like, this will be self-fulfilling if you don't start upskilling. And it's not just them, but it's us. It's like you just described. And so but I have definitely struggled, and I have been trying to figure out how to get better and better at this, because we still have a couple more areas of the company to introduce AI to, and they're not wrong that we are going to lose some headcount. I mean, with completing this project, we did cut about 15% of the entire company because one whole team didn't come along with it. But at the same time, we're able to bring a couple of those people with us that are invested in this. So it's a tough conversation to have. If anyone's willing to hear it, I try to level with them that, like, I am in the same position. If Jolly does not make this transition, then I don't have a job. So
Yeah.
I sympathize with where you're at. I'm only leading personally with my own actions, trying to understand how to build stuff myself within reason, because I got to run the business. So I got to pay contractors sometimes, but I really am trying to automate parts of my own job.
Yeah, it's really a difficult thing. And I say, especially I get the impression from our conversations over the years, Greg, that you're a pretty empathetic and in touch with the people you work with kind of person. Like you don't look at them coldly like a robot and just say, "Oh yeah, do your job," minions. You care about them, right? And I think because of that, and I do too. And so because of it, it's especially hard because we are looking at this thing and we're saying, look, this technology is doing jobs that I'm currently paying a lot of money for, or at least part of those jobs, some portion of those jobs. It means I'm going to need fewer people. I've got these people here. I'm going to have to make some hard decisions, and I'm going to have to try to work with them to make those decisions. And it sucks. Like, again, there's no good way around it. Now, in the long run, the hope is, and my hope is, if we run a good, sustainable business that stays current with the market, we'll be able to hire lots more people in the future, right? And that's my justification in my own head. I have to justify it somehow. But I agree with you. It's very difficult in the short term to go through this. And, I'll try to kind of broaden this out. We're going to go through this again and again in the next 20, 30 years of our careers, because we're in an industry that has a lot of technological change. So unless you do go open that corner welding shop that is, not going to change because of technology for 30 years, it's going to happen. And even then, I bet it will too. Anyway, so it's an interesting topic to think about.
I think so. I think the hardest part for me, finance has been interesting to learn, but HR is absolutely the hardest part of running a business. And so the flip side of, appreciate you see me as an empathetic person. There's definitely people that have come through Jolly that think I'm not sure what vocabulary we're allowed on this show. So I'll stop there, but fill in the blank. And it's the worst part of the gig for both Morgan and I. We hate the hard conversation of, like, I don't really know what you're going to do after this, but that's where the relationship's going. So, like, we'll give you as much as we can to part ways, but we do need to part ways because it's not working for the business. And I totally agree that there's nothing, I think, if I ever feel good about that part of the business, then I've gone in the wrong direction. Like I don't ever want to feel good about that part of the business.
I love that. I think that's a good way to think about it. I've had my business coach tell me the same thing. Like, if you feel good about firing people, that are doing a good job that you just had to fire for financial or market reasons, then you've crossed into psychopath territory. And you probably should reevaluate a lot of things in your life. So I think that's fair.
No, I need your business coach's number.
Yeah. one of the things okay, so we're talking about in the company how AI is changing our workflows and internal stuff. And I'm similar to you, we've been able to cut costs, speed up timelines. We're making our best people more productive, and we lost some people because of it. But it's allowed us to do things for clients that are really exciting to them. And I was just on a couple of client calls this week and got super positive feedback from the way we're doing this and how quick things are delivered and how good it is still. Because again, we've kept our quality high, so we it takes a little more human effort too. But anyway, let's talk about the broader market though, because what this has done to, in my perception, what this has done to all the things content, SEO, content marketing, just more generally digital marketing, has put this big question mark. Like, where's this all going? What's your opinion on what this whole technological advance means for the whole digital marketing ecosystem, and where do you see it going in the next 5 years?
That's a question that I wanted to put my head in the sand on, and did pretty successfully for about a year and a half. And the truth is, it is starting to negatively impact us. We like you pride ourselves on the quality of our service, and people have come to us for being able to get in the highest level publications, the Business Insiders, the Wall Street Journals, the New York Times, and that has become increasingly challenging, not because we're lowering the bar of our quality, but because everyone else is delivering what's called AI slop, right? And now that may seem like a cop out, which is why I put my head in the sand on this. But the reality is that a journalist receiving 10 times as many pitches as they used to, because the cost has gone down to almost zero on sending an email, means that they are not as receptive to the outreach. They're much more hesitant to put opportunities on the platforms that we use. And they also need to use AI detection software, which is flawed and throws out the good with the bad. And so there's a lot of things that has made it harder for us, not necessarily at the lower and mid quality tiers, but boy, we have sure had a lot of challenge in 2025 delivering at the very top, to the point that the sales we make now, where we used to want to sell 5 to 10 placements a month at that quality tier, we already decided we're only going to sell 3 a month at that tier, because the worst that you can do as a service provider is to overpromise and underdeliver. And not to say we're perfect, but I'm saying the opposite. We've learned that lesson the hard way. And so it's forcing us to adjust what we commit to for clients, and in an unfortunate way. So we have to adapt. We are trying to adapt, but that's causing us to need to adapt.
Yeah, we've always been in this cold outreach arms race for everything from cold sales outreach, cold reporter pitches, and it's always oscillated back and forth between the spam filters are getting really good and able to filter, keep your inbox clean, and the writers, the content writers or whatever, or the AI writers are getting better and able to slip through the spam filters more frequently. And I wonder if this is just another leveling up of the arms race, and maybe we'll figure that out eventually. The other side of me wonders, will the AI content get better and better to the point where it is literally indistinguishable from even good human writing? And I don't know. I mean, again, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this. Like, is the eventuality that you can produce unlimited, very high quality written content on par with a human in 5 years through AI, or is that not really possible given the personal experience aspect that it just doesn't have as a technology?
For every scenario, it'd be tough for me to issue a blanket statement, but I've already seen, a lot of what gets thrown out as a false positive as AI written are phrases that people who speak English as a second language use commonly.
Yeah.
And to me,
Yeah.
this is a hilariously tragic situation, because the LLMs are trained on the internet. And who wrote the internet? It's all the content mill writers who are English second language speakers. And so the common turns of phrase that everyone identifies as outing an LLM are the exact phrases that a person in India or Pakistan or Philippines or Bangladesh will use. And I don't say this lightly because, again, I'm calling in here from China. I spend most of my 20s in other countries, and I thoroughly enjoy and have an affinity for other cultures and appreciate when they speak our language. And we're doing business in English. And it's pretty wild that the people to feel the burn right now are the people who they're just trying their dang scrappiest best to take themselves out of a local economy and plug into the global economy. And their English is just still not good enough for people once again. So it's like you said, it's an arms race, and they are the ones right now, in my opinion, paying for it. It'd be tough for me to make a blanket statement, but I do think it's going to catch up with the me's of the world too, which is why like Jolly has to keep internally optimizing because the external pressure is just going to keep coming. Like it's not going to slow down. That maybe paints a bleak picture for you and I, which don't have a solution to, but I think we just keep pivoting and rolling with the times. But I don't doubt the ability of the AI to keep leveling up right now.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm not sure either. I keep wondering because it seems in the last year that a lot of the AI writing tools have sort of hit a plateau where they're not getting markedly better like they were the first 3 or 4 years of this stuff being public. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be another shoot, like where they shoot way up in what they're able to do. But it does mean that I just keep wondering if we've hit a bit of a, like, this is the level given the training data they have, but this is just speculative. The other thing though, that I think is an even bigger question mark, or maybe will affect us even more, is will people even read long form content on the internet in 5 years? Or are we going to be just writing stuff for AIs to consume to then summarize to people? Because the trend I'm seeing is, I'll just make you like simple example. I don't want to read that full article in the Wall Street Journal. I want ChatGPT to give me like the top 5 bullet points from it and the stats, and then I'll move on to the next thing. Cause like 95% of it is just honestly just sort of filler for the information I really want. Now, there is another side of people that will say that reading and that focus and that time spent is part of the experience and you need that, but there's just too much content for me to read all of it anyway. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? Like what happens when we stop reading in general? Like, does that kill both of our businesses too?
Yeah, and I work in search, and so there's also research being done to see is the quality of search from ChatGPT at all of the same as Google. And so lately, this may just be SEOs trying to prop ourselves up, but saying, okay, most of the traffic from chat, first of all, are bots, but even of the human traffic, it's informational, not bottom of funnel decision making traffic. So these are all good questions. Sheepishly, I thought that I would never be a YouTube Shorts consumer, but here I find myself just as addicted to. I'm struggling because I'm thinking of the Mandarin for Douyin, but just scrolling on the YouTube Shorts. So yeah, I think what Jolly is doing is what any, I believe, business has to do, which is adapt. So instead of just trying to get in long form content where we see opportunities or with digital PR proactively, we are looking at ChatGPT responses to queries related to our clients' business objectives, looking at the cited material and reaching out to those to try to get our clients in those conversations. And whether or not that means that the user is going to read the full article or they're just going to see our client's name cited by that, or they're just going to see our client's name in response to a question where they didn't get to see it before. those are, as marketers, our goal for our clients is to help them appear in the conversation wherever it's happening, however long people are consuming it. Same thing with Reddit. We're trying to get them in conversations. We never did Reddit before, but we're doing Reddit now. So these are not long form kind of medium, but it's where the conversations are happening. I know you and I could wax about what that does for us. I don't let my kids have phones. I'll tell you that. So I limit my own screen time on purpose outside of work. So these kind of things. But we're here creating media, so I'm a little bit part of the problem in that sense.
Yeah, it's a really big question. These are really big things that probably all of us in tech or that are plugged in like we are think about, of like, how much is this technology affecting us in a positive or negative way? I liken it to, when people ask me about this, especially relatives who are not technical, I always say, society takes a lot longer to accept the dangers of things than when people start to realize it. So, for example, cars had no seatbelts for much longer than we knew it was unsafe to have seatbelts. Like we've known, and cigarettes were legal and had no restrictions on them for much longer than we knew. There was research saying that it was really bad for you. So my point is that in 20 years, we're probably going to look back on the way doom scrolling on social media has affected our brains and say, man, I can't believe we let people do that. It's like breathing asbestos, and I don't know exactly what that means and what the regulations should look like, what the limitations should be. But like, I agree with you. There's probably some stuff here that we're going to find out in 10 or 20 years that really put us all in a state of repair. The last thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, Greg, because we're kind of coming up on time, is reading. Are you a book reader, and any recommendations from the last couple of years that you really like that I can put on my reading list?
Yeah, absolutely. I currently am reading, you mentioned Tony Robbins. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Another book that I would have stuck my nose up at 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, but now I'm finding myself needing someone to remind me that willpower does exist. I do need to have defined desires, all these kind of things. Very helpful mindset book. Really loved Who Not How. It's blanking on the author's name, but just a great reminder, very timely, and fits right in with our conversation on, all this AI talk. It's not about replacing all humans. It's not even about doing all of it yourself, but certainly one of the who's that I'm looking for right now is that AI specialist who can, and that's what I'm kind of challenging the current team, is like, who amongst you wants to develop these skills to be of use, not just to us, but to yourself. So Who Not How, awesome book. And then on personal habits, it was a few years ago now, but I thought Atomic Habits was actually not just like popular kind of stuff. I thought it was very practical. Little things like, if you want to do this thing, then schedule it immediately after the thing that you already do to stack habits, it said. Or if you want to do this other thing, like reading at night, just leave the book literally on your pillow. I have something I want to read at night. I put it in the middle of my bed after I've made it in the morning, so that I gotta physically pick it up to get in bed that night. So those are three that I've really enjoyed. Can I flip it to you, Karl, so I get a book rec out of this?
Oh, absolutely. So you mentioned Who Not How. All of Dan Sullivan's books that I've read are really good. 10X is better than 2X, I think, is one of them.
That was awesome.
And then there's one more that I read. I'd have to dig up my list. I'll give you one of my favorites. It's not really a business book, other than the psychology of life that it touches on. But it's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Like, I would imagine you're in a similar age bracket to me. My parents are getting up there, and they're both healthy and okay, but they're all starting to face health issues, and people in their generation are dying. And one thing it made me realize is I have very little connection to or appreciation for the brevity of life. In that book, Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, is by a woman who's a hospice nurse. And she talks about the 5 things that people in their last days really regret or mention as things they wish they had done. And man, for me, it was very like life altering. It just like realizing that you spend all this time working and focusing on this stuff that when in the last 10 days that you're alive, you're not going to give 2 shits about. And so I think there's some reminder of that I need to do for myself every so often, because all this stuff we're doing, Greg, is like, it's so ephemeral. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Super, super important day to day, supporting our lifestyle. But at the end, my 10-year-old son surprised the heck out of me a few weeks ago. He came up with a fear of dying. I mean, we lost my dad this year. So like, as you said, similar phase of life. And I was like, you know what, dude? You got to make the most of it every day. And then you really got nothing to be worried about. Because everything I've heard about Regrets of the Dying, and I wrote down the title, I'm sure you saw. So I'm definitely going to read that to refresh my understanding. It's almost always the things that people didn't do, the chances they didn't take.
Totally. Yes. And I think those of us who are entrepreneurs, we're probably a little more towards the edge of like, we are taking the risks we want to take. We're being the people we want to be. It's a good reminder, though, that like, don't just live off other people's expectations for you, or don't compare yourself to other people, because none of that is stuff you're going to think about at the end. And it's I think this is, it's a good reminder overall. That's always been one of the books in the last couple of years that's stuck with me the most. And I always, when people ask for a rec, I'll throw that one out because it's a little different than the typical business book.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So Greg, obviously people can follow you on LinkedIn. You guys have a YouTube channel with Jolly SEO as well. Jolly SEO got lots of resources you guys put out there. Y'all are really active in content. Anything else you want to plug or anything to mention for people to follow up with you?
No. Please. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. As you mentioned, jollyseo.com. We do our thing over there. And awesome to reconnect with you, Karl. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. I always enjoy it. Greg, thanks so much for the time, and we will talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.